Hello, hello. Oh, how we doing? Are we ready? It feels so strange. It feels like this weekend has been absolute chaos. I just don't know what to expect. I just feel like anything could happen, and it's likely that it will happen. You know what I mean? Like anything that you can predict, anything that you can think of in the realms of possibility, reasonable that it might just happen. Hello, Alex, mate. How are we? Have a little. Oh, actually, I haven't full screened my stream, so I'll very quickly do that. You can see Las Vegas in all of its beauty. But yeah, should we start by talking about this weekend? Greetings from Malaysia. Wow, thank you. Hello, hello. Adelaide as well. Goodness me, everyone is all over the place. Actually, Malaysia is probably quite a nice time to watch the Grand Prix now, isn't it? Malaysia seems like they've got the time zone in a good one. Can't be us waiting up at 6 a.m. for the race. Hey, look, it might be absolutely brilliant. I feel like it's one of those things that it might just deliver enough for it to be worthwhile. Like I was very close to getting up at 4:30. Hello, Nicholas. I was very close to getting up at 4:30 for free practice one. In fact, Taryn, who I do my podcast with, did get up at 4:30 for free practice one, and then was greeted by that. Was greeted by 8 minutes of action on track. So, so very glad that I didn't get up for that free practice one session yesterday, but also, worthwhile to see the craziness of that free practice day unfold. Obviously, then cancelled due to that manhole cover coming up. Carlos Sainz having to completely change around his car, no fault of his own, but unfortunately in the rules says not allowed to do so, and therefore he's going to take a 10 place penalty. But just the delays, the weirdness, the fact that cars were still out on track at 4 a.m. local time. Like, basically, if you are a Formula One driver this weekend, you have to be nocturnal. And we're seeing, like, all of the drivers, I think, struggle a touch with the fact that they have to be at their absolute best at ridiculous times. Like they have to adjust to the Las Vegas time zone. Obviously, they had a couple of weeks to do so. Luckily, there wasn't a race straight away after Brazil, but this could have easily been just horrendous for the Formula One drivers, to be honest. 6:15 p.m. here. Ooh, not bad. Not what you were expecting. Race in America usually 3-5 a.m. Yeah, it's very strange to kind of have this time zone shift. Obviously, I was thinking that when I first saw the Las Vegas Grand Prix, it was going to be something similar to what we kind of have for Austin, maybe a little bit later, because obviously it's a desert, has to cool down a touch more. But no, they have gone all out for the midnight viewing of Formula One in Las Vegas. But yeah, 10 place penalty for Sainz, very weird one. FIA could have made an exception. So effectively they had to go by the letter of the law. And I suppose there's like two ways you can look at it. Like they shouldn't make an exception now because then they'll be forced to make exceptions in the future for other drivers when various bits and pieces happen. So it's better to just cover your back now and say, look, we're not going to make any exceptions to the rules. But then also it does feel really harsh. Like feels very, very harsh on Carlos Sainz. But let's delve into a little bit. Let me just double check. I've got the quali boards and bits and pieces loaded properly because I did a bit of an update of settings and bits and pieces yesterday, and let's just hope that they've all stayed and working still. Sector timings up there working. Nice. Team radio. Nothing yet. Needs to be a little bit bigger. Cool. No doubt, no doubt. But no multi-viewer data. Okay, it might be a weird one. Come on, multi-viewer. Let's well, I'm glad I double checked this now. Hate the penalties for mechanical stuff already. Yeah, it's a trick. It's one of those things that, like, I understand it. They obviously want to make sure that we don't use a ridiculous amount of engines and gearboxes and various bits and pieces over the course of the season. But yeah, I know what you mean too. It's just a weird kind of nuance of the rules, I guess. That even when it's completely not your fault, you just have to take the L on it. It's a bit like when people crash into other drivers. So, like, for instance, one driver is to blame for the incident, one driver isn't to blame for the incident, but maybe the driver who isn't to blame for the incident takes damage to their power unit and they have to replace part of it because of an incident that they had nothing to do with. Sometimes that just happens, unfortunately. And they still have to take the fact that they were at no fault for causing a collision or at no fault for an incident taking place, but still have to take a huge chunk out of their season's available power units. Ooh, Alex Albon's car just being double checked. So Alex Albon also the little incident in free practice 3. Haven't mentioned free practice 3 very much, just because all the talking points kind of came from the chaos of, are we calling it free practice 2? I guess we're calling it free practice 2, even though free practice 1 didn't exist, and then it was half an hour longer than it should have been, and also lots later in the day than it should have been. But yeah, I think when it came to free practice 3, as you can see, George Russell topping the timing sheets, Logan Sargent third fastest, but Alex Albon sixth fastest there, you can see, right at the end of the session. Just clipped the wall. Was it a massive shunt or anything like that? But hit the wall hard enough, dislodged his rear tyre, and then once that's off, you're kind of off, aren't you? That's kind of the end of your afternoon. And was the end of the session as well. Red flag came out and not enough real time to run on for the cars. There is Lando Norris's car in a pool. I hope they get that on track sort of soon. Kind of got 10 minutes or so, and then Lando Norris needs that. So interesting that they've let the team deliver that to a rooftop pool. But a brand new circuit, not a lot to really go off of, to be honest with you. If we do look at that free practice 2 session as kind of our judgment point for the weekend, just because I feel like free practice 3 this morning was a little bit of a Hail Mary from a lot of teams, trying lots of various bits and pieces, and therefore tricky to judge realistically where the pace of the cars is from this morning's session. I think if we just look at yesterday as kind of the clarity on that, Red Bull looked pretty quick, as expected, I guess, but I was maybe hoping that Red Bull might struggle a little bit here just because of their higher downforce setup that they are running. So if you look at kind of the big three, Mercedes, Ferrari, and Red Bull. McLaren should be in the big three. I feel like, we'll throw McLaren in the big three once we get into next season. But for this season, if we look at the top three, sort of Red Bull, Ferrari, and Mercedes, Ferrari are the quickest through the straight line, so they broke the speed. They broke the speed barrier. Speed barrier? What am I saying? They had the top speed through the speed trap is the word I'm looking for. They had the top speed through the speed trap, and then Mercedes kind of in the middle, and Red Bull slowest through the speed trap, which is pretty big because this is the second highest speed circuit of the season, with Monza being first, and Monza is effectively just 7 or 8 straight lines. So it makes sense that this one is also sort of 4 very big straight lines, incredibly high speed, and very, very high throttle action as well. Like, I think it's like 70 something percent full throttle, nearly 80% full throttle, which is an obscene amount of driving to do just at the top speed, the absolute limit of these Formula One cars. But I feel like McLaren, because they had that cooling problem with Lando Norris, we don't 100% know where they're at. Like, don't get me wrong, Oscar Piastri did pretty well this morning and put in a second place finish. But I just feel like Lando Norris is still the main man there at McLaren to really look out when it comes to the full potential of that car. Just feels like Oscar Piastri, maybe a little bit harshly I'm judging him here, but post Qatar, that kind of triple header didn't get majority of those races to go his way. Obviously got very unlucky in Brazil, but then also the couple before that weren't exceptional performances from Oscar. Like, they were very bitty, and there were partial bits where it was like, oh, it looks like it's going to be good, looks like it's going to be bad, but not quite there yet. Will I be showing the qualifiers on screen? I mean, I'll be showing the timings, and I can show track maps, radio messages, but unfortunately I cannot show the actual qualifying because that is illegal, unfortunately. Thank you so much for a couple of people subscribing there. Taron Preet and Chainsaw Man. What a name. Chainsaw Man. Isn't that a manga? Or an anime? Or both, I should say. Is that Chainsaw Man? The guy with literally a chainsaw for a head? You know. Say what you see. It's been 7 years for Daniel Ricciardo to get his dream. Probably won't get out of Q1. Yeah, it's been weird. The AlphaTauris not looking as quick as they have been. Again, looked like a real resurgence for AlphaTauri in the last 3 races. But not looking like it's going to really click for them this weekend. I mean, we'll have to wait and see. I just feel like it's very easy to try and make conclusions at this point and try and think about who's where and what's going to happen. But I also feel like there's a lot of things that could change. It's a lot of things that could change. Oh, it does look absolutely beautiful, though. The sphere is just mesmerizing. I don't know what it is about it. I just can't not look at the sphere. Just always catches your eye when you're looking at the skyline of Las Vegas. And that's impressive because the rest of the skyline is pretty phenomenal too. Under the lights, the Las Vegas Strip. Okay, it's been an absolute shambolic weekend. It's been a shambolic few months for the Las Vegas Strip in trying to get this prepared. But it is prepared. We're ready for it. And we are finally in a position where we're going to see the cars at their limits going for it on the absolute spectacle that is this circuit. Who do I think will be in the Red Bull second seat next season? I think Sergio Perez, as long as he comes second in the driver's standings, which he could do this weekend. He could just confirm it this weekend. And then that would be done and dusted, and we can stop kind of talking about Sergio Perez. What channel am I watching on? Sky, unfortunately, because the UK doesn't have many options. It's not as wide variety of options as some of the other countries and places around the world. What happened to Chain Bear? That is a great question. I don't know, really. He maybe just lost a little bit of motivation or got a different job. The problem is a lot of the Formula One kind of sphere of YouTubers, there are not many of them that are full-time. Like, to really break into like full-time Formula One content is quite tricky, just because, wow, what is going on with my hair? To break into like full-time Formula One content is quite hard. There aren't that many if you think of the kind of scope of Formula One channels that are out there, there aren't that many that are like over 100k. And even the ones that are 100k, I know a few of those guys are not full time because they just don't have the ability to make enough content, which makes enough money to be able to go full time and not replace the jobs that they already have. So it is a very tricky niche to really build in, especially when you have a season like this and Max Verstappen's just dominating everything, and there's not like the ridiculous number of talking points right at the sharp end of the grid. So I imagine he maybe just started doing something else, to be honest. Anyhow, we are underway. We are getting going with Kevin Magnussen and Nico Hulkenberg, the American team on the American track. Sounds about right. Daniel Ricciardo, Logan Sargent just behind as well. You were in. Oh, right. Yeah. Here we go then. Oh. Just a reminder that apparently they're slow on pit exit is fine, but not stationary. Of course, the Formula One higher up still trying to get going. Rod Stewart is there. Anyhow, shall we get into it? Let's have a little look at the track map so we know who is where at this point and what's going to go down. As I said, it's going to be the Hasses to get us underway in this one. Wow, everything a little bit slow. Is that just me, or is that multi-viewer? We'll see. But Kevin Magnussen, Nico Hulkenberg going to get us underway. Daniel Ricciardo, Logan Sargent, Zhou Guanyu, and Valtteri Bottas also entering that final sector. Ocon and Gasly out on track. Tsunoda there as well. Sergio Perez, the first of the real hitters up there towards the top end. And currently battling with Yuki Tsunoda as they go around the sphere. Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc in the two Ferrari cars behind. Lando Norris and Piastri out as well. Still yet to see either of the Mercedes cars. Max Verstappen still in the pits. Alex Albon also staying in there. Hopefully his Williams is going to be fully ready to go. And neither of the Aston Martins out on track either. Is this really it? What would you like, Metaverse Trader? I'd like to know what you expected from qualifying in Formula One, because this is how it is. Kevin Magnussen, quicker than his teammate through the first sector, was Kevin Magnussen. And going pretty well, actually, considering the chunk of cars that have completed the first sector. Kevin Magnussen's still the quickest of anybody, and he was first through it. Maybe just benefiting a touch from the clean air in front of him, but then has less of a toe when it comes to this big back straight, the second largest straight, all the way down to turn 14. Heavy braking zone. I feel like it's turn 14, where if we're going to see an incident happen, it'll be down through here. 15 and 16, a little wiggle through that chicane. And then down to 17. Effectively, flat out through 17 as they come around the corner. And a really, really short run to the line. And Kevin Magnussen sets the standard at a 1:35. Not too shabby. How the grandstand's doing. That is a great point. Yeah, that was another thing I forgot to mention. The fact that everyone was sent home for the free practice too, because they were worried about the security of the Formula One cars and track, and fans being able to be kept safe when a lot of the stewards and various people had to go home. Logan Sargent, I imagine, doing a second warm-up lap there, because a 1:53.3 is certainly not going to get you through. But again, we are expecting the teams to maybe struggle a touch in terms of tyre temperature. So we could see 2 out laps to get themselves into the correct window, that tyre performance. Charles Leclerc, first and second sectors being quickest. Sergio Perez resets the standard at a 135.3. Still some time to find, though, for the majority of the cars out there, especially if Charles Leclerc is the driver to judge yourself against, because he's just done a 134.8. Wow. But I'm just trying to see that it's difficult to see the grandstands because they're kind of in the darkness, whereas the track is lit up insanely. The grandstands do look pretty full. Pretty full from what I can see so far. Beside AlphaTauri, there's a chance Haas, Alfa Romeo, and Williams qualify high. Yeah, it's looking competitive this weekend, especially Williams. I feel like they just need to just confirm it. You know what I mean? Like they basically have. If you look at the constructor standings, they're fairly comfortably in 7th place. But I feel like just a couple more points would really just be like, that's it. You know what I mean? And also just making sure that nobody else, like by scoring points themselves, they effectively take those points away from the other teams as well, because there are only so many point scoring places. Because you're imagining, you know, both Ferraris being in there, both Red Bulls, both Mercedes, probably both McLarens, maybe an Alpine. So you're looking at like 1, possibly 2 point scoring places for those teams down towards the back of the pack. So it's kind of difficult. Ooh, Max Verstappen so close to the wall on that left-hander. Wow. Let's see if Max Verstappen can put together something a little bit special in this final sector. Not quickest in either the first or second sectors, Max Verstappen. In fact, I feel like we can take a little trip over, have a touch upon the sector timings themselves, and just see who is where to give ourselves... Oh, come on. Kevin Magnussen quickest through the first sector again for the Haas team, though. Charles Leclerc was quickest through all 3 sectors, but you can see Max Verstappen, who is just a 10th of Charles Leclerc's lap time when he comes across the line, is looking pretty swift as well. Carlos Sainz going for a flying lap, just went fastest. Oh no, second fastest still in the first sector. Kevin Magnussen is those Ferrari-powered cars seemingly getting the best out of it. Interesting that Kevin Magnussen is running the new Haas, whereas Nico Hulkenberg opting to go back to the old Haas package, obviously before they brought in their really chunky upgrade for Austin. Nico Hulkenberg running the old Haas car. Carlos Sainz setting fastest middle sector. Charles Leclerc going even quicker in the middle sector again. And it just feels like the Ferrari this weekend is looking very swift indeed. We know that they do come to life a little bit more in qualifying compared to the race. But qualifying well here, of all places, street circuits, not sure whether there's going to be many overtaking opportunities. But Carlos Sainz, a 134.7, gets a 10th on his teammate. But Charles Leclerc is absolutely rattling around. Oh my! That is a 134.0 and really redefines what is available to these Formula One cars here. I feel like everyone was trying to find a little bit of a niche for themselves, get themselves into the groove, but Charles Leclerc has just completely blown the Formula One cars out of the water. Lando Norris, a little bit out of shape. Oh, and a Red Bull. Yeah, and Lando Norris blocked there by a Red Bull. Couldn't see which Red Bull that was, unfortunately. And Oscar Piastri also in the McLaren. Ooh, getting insanely close to the wall there. Just kisses the T-Mobile advertisement, does Oscar Piastri, but keeps that McLaren going. But Leclerc, Sainz, Verstappen are top 3. Logan Sargent in 4th place until Fernando Alonso comes along and spoils the Williams party just a touch and drops Logan Sargent down to 5th. Alex Albon now coming around. So we've seen almost everybody set respective lap times apart from the 2 Mercedes cars and Alex Albon, who is currently down in 19th place, but about to change that fairly considerably, you'd imagine. Just coming through 15 and 16, so tight through there, close to the walls, keeping that Williams pinned to the floor, and comes across the line 4th fastest, a 1:35 still, so still not anywhere close to that Charles Leclerc time. The Monash man absolutely flying, but now Lando Norris getting closest. 0.6 of a second. Sergio Perez, 0.5 of a second. Here we go then. Ooh, Yuki Tsunoda, lap time deleted for track limits. Lewis Hamilton goes across the line 3rd fastest, and George Russell, his teammate, pretty slow middle sector from George Russell. In fact, the slowest middle sector from George Russell. And needs to get out of that bottom 5, but not looking very swift at all, George Russell, at the moment in time. Don't know whether he's backed off to go for a 3rd lap here, because that is not a speedy time from George Russell by any means. Thank you so much for updating me in Formula 1 content. No problem at all. I love it. It is my hobby. Is Albon facing penalties for car repairs? Thought I heard something about it earlier. That is a great question. I don't think so at this point, unless he will have changed his gearbox. That'll be the only thing that is kind of in and amongst. Oh, that's why George Russell pulled off of that lap. He has a track limits violations. That is Yuki Tsunoda and George Russell now with track limits violations. Glandon, thank you so much for the subscription. Appreciate that. But yeah, the only thing I can imagine Alex Albon might have to replace after that shunt is the gearbox. But I imagine they've probably got a spare one of those and therefore won't come under any infringement for swapping out parts that have already been used. Oscar Piastri, 6th fastest. So the McLaren now coming to life a little bit today. Obviously, a big gap between them and the rest of the leaders yesterday in that longer free practice 2 session. But free practice 3 looking quicker, particularly from Oscar Piastri, and now both of them up there into the top 10 fairly solidly. 4th and 6th. Charles Leclerc still no one getting close as George Russell goes 5th fastest. Still 6.5 tenths off that Charles Leclerc time. Can Max Verstappen get anywhere close? It's just a 10th off, and that's where it looks like the battle is going to be, doesn't it? Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen within touching distance of one another as we've got 5 minutes left in the session. At the moment, Zhou Guanyu, Daniel Ricciardo, Nico Hülkenberg, Pierre Gasly, and Yuki Tsunoda would be the 5 drivers to miss out on any more laps around this Las Vegas circuit this weekend. Logan Sargent, 11th quickest at his 3rd home Grand Prix of the season. I feel like Miami counts as his proper home Grand Prix. And then Austin and Vegas, I know that, you know, they're also American races, but you can't have 3 home Grand Prix, can you? It's just like too much. Carlos Sainz quickest in the first sector again. Charles Leclerc quickest in the middle sector. And the Ferraris just seemingly finding pace where everybody else can't. Maybe it is that straight line speed advantage that the Ferrari car has got. They're running a very skinny wing, the Ferraris. But Carlos Sainz now goes quickest and is the first driver in this session, at least, to go into the 133s, a 133.8, but then a 133.6 from Charles Leclerc. And the track is evolving at a rapid rate at this point. Carlos Sainz has a 10-place penalty? Correct. But, I mean, you still want to start as high up as possible, even with a 10-place penalty. Who are your top five? Ooh, best five drivers. What from 2000s onwards? My goodness me. Schumacher, Vettel, Raikkonen, Hamilton, Alonso. I mean, that's a very, very solid five, to be fair. Very, very solid five. Ooh, Lando Norris. That turn deleted. And Oscar Piastri now on the bump. This is what I was worried about coming into this qualifying session. The track evolution is pretty substantial at this point. Like the track evolution is getting very, very impactful. And therefore, you kind of want to be out as late as humanly possible in this Q1 session. But you also need to get your tyres up to temperature. You need to make sure you're not in too much traffic. You want to be close enough to someone to get a tow down the really, really long straight, but not that close so that you have the dirty air through that kind of twisty 6, 7, 8, 9 section. It's kind of difficult to judge this one. I think we're going to see quite a bit of traffic building up through the final sector. Ooh. Yuki Tsunoda actually not running a clear visor, they're mentioning. Yeah, that is interesting. Maybe the lighting is so bright. Oh, Lance Stroll 1 centimeter away from the wall. Ow, ow, ow. Am I single? No. Turtles, I'm not. Which is, yeah, there's the truth. I'm not. Just don't know how much more to add to that. Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz into the pits then for the Ferraris. So they're happy that those times are going to be good enough. Opinion on the Carlos Sainz penalty? Harsh, but understandable. I feel like they can't start making exceptions for various bits and pieces. Apparently, they tried very, very hard to find a loophole, to find some rule somewhere that would give them an opportunity to take that penalty away from Carlos Sainz. But unfortunately, there was nothing in the rules that allowed them to sort of sidestep that penalty in any way. And therefore has to take it this time around. And I think that's a good thing. I think we shouldn't start trying to find penalties and find ways around them where it kind of suits. I feel like it's just opening up a can of worms for people to be like, well, this person didn't get a penalty here and here and here and here, and therefore blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, if it's in the rules that you get a penalty for this, you get a penalty. Oh, and a yellow flag in Sector 1. Yuki Tsunoda getting all out of shape at turn 5 on his fast lap. And that means that Sargent, Albon, Stroll, Bottas are all going to lose out a touch there because of the yellow flag. Green flag continues, but Yuki Tsunoda is going to be out of qualifying then after that mistake. And we're looking for that bottom 5 then. The checkered flag drops. And who is going to drop out of qualifying? Currently, Joe, Piastri, Stroll, Ricciardo, and Tsunoda. Tsunoda guaranteed after that mistake. Hulkenberg, 4th fastest. Wow. Both cars looking to get through for the Haas team. Kevin Magnussen down in 9th place. George Russell goes 3rd fastest. Daniel Ricciardo does his best to get into there, but only 14th place. Lando Norris is in the pits by the looks of things, and is only 15th fastest. This could be another nightmare for McLaren come qualifying. Lance Stroll is on a flying lap, goes 3rd fastest, and that's going to be Lando Norris then. Out of Q1, both McLaren cars. Wow. And I know that they really struggled yesterday, but McLaren really, really missing out there. Wow. So that is Lando Norris, Esteban Ocon, Zhou Guanyu, Oscar Piastri, and Yuki Tsunoda. Not good enough. And those 5 will not take part in Q2. And where did it all go wrong? It was in that middle sector for Oscar Piastri. Look at that, 19th quickest of anybody for Oscar Piastri, and 19th quickest overall because of that middle sector. Then tried to claw back some pace in the final sector, but that didn't happen either. 15th fastest there. Let's have a little look what's happening here. We're seeing Sergio Perez going very, very slowly through that final corner. Oh, and there's yeah, this is what I mean. So much traffic in that final sector. Esteban Ocon. Oh, with a Red Bull dancing his way through him. And yeah, Esteban Ocon not happy with the wheel-to-wheel action of Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen going for the overtaking opportunity in the Alpine there. I mean, both of them very, very close to touching there, Esteban Ocon and Max Verstappen. Wouldn't surprise me if there's some penalties for various bits and pieces. There we go. Following race director's rules, Hamilton, Russell, Albon, Joe, Gasly, Bottas, all noted for not following that restricted maximum delta time. And that was introduced at Monza, you might remember. The maximum delta through the final sector, so as to stop cars from just going ridiculously slowly through the final sector to make a gap, but also get in the way of others. And there's a lot of drivers there under investigation. So, Lando Norris in 16th place. Just hold your horses a touch. You might still be okay, depending on how all of these go. Max knew what he was doing, deliberately ruining Ocon's lap. Yeah, there's no love between Ocon and Max, is there? Like, they're really not over that Brazil incident. They just seem to not get on, the two of them, and highlighted once again as Esteban Ocon trying to find a little bit of space. I feel like Esteban Ocon did, kind of dart through the pack a little bit come the final sector there, but Sergio Perez going super slowly, and then Max Verstappen joining in, both Red Bulls going very, very slow in that final sector to try and get themselves that space. And yeah, Ocon, I guess, jumped the queue, and Max Verstappen wasn't happy about it. So Max going for that dive up the inside into turn 1. And didn't work out for either of them, really. I suppose Max Verstappen can sort of rest on the laurels that the fact the Red Bull is quick enough to get through even when they don't get that final lap in qualifying, whereas Esteban Ocon was desperate to try and improve. And Ocon should punch Max this time. I mean, I feel like Max Verstappen does need kind of putting back in his place this weekend. He's been obnoxiously rude, I would say, Max Verstappen, at almost every opportunity that has been given to him. And I know that he's not happy to be in Vegas. I know that Max Verstappen isn't happy to do the extra bits and pieces of media work, but it's only because it's the first time in Vegas. It's only because we're trying to build the anticipation. We're trying to build hype around a brand new track added to the Formula One calendar, which I don't think is too much to ask of the Formula One drivers. And Max Verstappen's been a bit of a dick about it. What app is this? This is the lovely people at Multiviewer, and I have a little cap up there of Multiviewer. But yeah, cannot recommend Multiviewer enough. They've been backing the streams this year since, for a long time now. They've been backing the streams for at least a good 15 races this season so far. And they have delivered on every single aspect. They have everything that you would want. Track limits, infringements, a track map, sector timings. They have speed trap data, data from each of the cars' telemetries. It is a wonderful, wonderful app to have. Yuki Tsunoda, not very happy at all there. Throws the headrest out of his AlphaTauri car and disappears off into the back of the garage. So basically everybody just having an absolute mare and getting into some fights with one another at this point. Only Ferrari kind of taking it easy towards the end of that Q1 session. Both Ferraris in the garage, comfortably quickest of anybody on track. But everyone else having a little battle between themselves. George Russell with a second track limits violation that we missed. Lando Norris with a track limits violation. Lewis Hamilton with the track limits violation as well. Valtteri Bottas with a track limits violation. Have I ever played Fortnite? I have not, Liam. But I know they did a thing, like Lewis Hamilton's in Fortnite now. What is the whole Fortnite hype at the moment? Because I'm a big Ludwig viewer. And I haven't been recently because he's been playing a lot of Fortnite. Is there a thing going on? I feel like Fortnite kind of came and I thought it went, but now it seems to be back again. And everyone seems to be playing it, or at least the streamers that I frequent seem to be playing it. Let's get back going then. Both of the Aston Martins out swiftly. Maybe just thinking about the fact that they stayed in the garage a little bit longer last time out, not working in their favour. So out quickest of anybody, Alonso and Stroll. Magnussen, Ricciardo through, of course, just sneaking through. But unfortunately for the McLaren team, they waited and waited and waited, hoped that maybe a penalty or something might come through. But Lando Norris resigned to 16th place tomorrow for the Las Vegas Grand Prix. And it's going to be tricky to get points from there. And you know what? I said at the beginning, I blame myself. A new OG season, of course. But yeah, Lando Norris. I said at the beginning of qualifying, it was going to be tricky for, you know, those kind of midfieldy teams to really consolidate some points, because we were talking about that battle between AlphaTauri, Williams, Alfa Romeo, who's going to kind of come out on top in that. And now Haas seemingly jumping into the fray once again to not be resigned to bottom of the driver's stand, of the constructor standings. I almost went for Haas as one of my winners when I did my predictions, to be honest. I was very, very close. I went for Williams instead, just because of that straight line speed advantage. But Haas looking really, really good so far in terms of this first qualifying. Imagine since Lewis Hamilton is famous, he became a Mario Kart 9 character. They did do a Formula 1 like Mario Kart ripoff, didn't they? What was that called? It was on PlayStation. It was like a Formula 1 Mario Kart ripoff, and it was awful. Mainly because Mario Kart has just kind of nailed the niche, you know what I mean? There's a lot of Mario Kart ripoffs out there in the world, especially when Mario Kart kind of first came to be. There was a lot of like Crash Bandicoot races, although Crash Team Racing is very, very good actually. Apart from Crash Team Racing, basically everything else that's come out that's been like a go-kart racing game has not really lived up to the expectations. They returned them back from 5+ years ago. Oh, I see. Gonna give me a follow for my chat interaction. I'm all about the chat interaction. That's what I love about these live sessions with you guys. We get into some very weird and wonderful debates, but it is very nice to spend the qualifying sessions with you. Feel like we should start talking about the racing as the flying laps are starting to tumble in. Fernando Alonso setting the standard, being the first guy across the line, but Lance Stroll just slotting in behind him. Kevin Magnussen going quickest in the Haas. Oh, it's not a real lap time from Alonso or Stroll now that I look at it. Carlos Sainz comes across the line at 134.1 from the Ferrari, and we're ramping up once again. I think we're seeing a lot of cars doing 2 opening laps, 2 laps to get their cars within the right temperature window, because Alonso, Sargent, Stroll, Ricciardo all seem to be going for a second lap, because a 142 or a 149 is not going to be anywhere close enough to getting yourself into the top 10. Pierre Gasly also with a 142, so he'll be doing another lap after that one. Fernando Alonso goes quickest in the first sector, and it's pretty decent through the middle sector as well. So Aston Martin maybe coming up to the party. There is Sergio Perez goes quickest by 1,000th of a second from Charles Leclerc. Wow, a 133.965 for Sergio Perez, a 133.966 for Charles Leclerc. They are the margins at the top of the standings with 10 minutes left to go. Fernando Alonso, though, is the man that we are on board with watching because he's going very quick and very quick indeed to go top of the timing sheets. A 133.88 for Fernando Alonso. His teammate Lance Stroll through the final corner, not quite at the same level. A 135 dead and over a second off of his teammate there, Lance Stroll. So not the lap he would have been hoping for. Here's Pierre Gasly, who is behind the Aston Martins. Ooh. Just the guys on Sky debating how much the track is really rubbering in. Obviously, the tyres colder than they usually would be, and therefore maybe just not laying down that kind of layer of tacky rubber that we see during the regular qualifying sessions, I should say, under sort of more lenient temperatures. Alex Albon, a 134. Wow, Alex Albon 5th fastest, and yeah, as they're touching upon, could be the first driver to go 22-0 against his teammate Alex Albon. Still has the advantage. Charles Leclerc into the pits, and a swift pit stop for Ferrari. Don't even pull the Ferrari car back into the garage. Effectively a racing pit stop for Charles Leclerc, and back out on track for the Monegasque man. McLaren screwed up. Yeah, unfortunately, McLaren messed up both of their laps, and Daniel Ricciardo just kind of snuck through in 15th place. I can't imagine him getting into the top 10, though. I feel like that would be a huge step. Hamilton's tyres, question mark earlier. Does that mean he's running the coveted mystery compound? Possibly. Thank you, Liam, mate, for the subscription. How did McLaren screw up? No pace timing issue. It was just a combination of a few things. Like the first flying lap that Lando Norris did was deleted for track limits infringements. And then when it came to kind of really getting that lap in, they just weren't quite in the right place. Like there's a little bit of traffic, not quite in the right timing zone. And yeah, just a combination of little bits and pieces, but all of those little things stack up. And that's kind of where it all falls apart. Will I be commentating on the race too? Of course. I am live every single session, or I should say every single competitive session. So qualifying, sprint race, and Grand Prix themselves. We are always live for those every single weekend. And we have been for a couple of years now. Nearly 2 and a bit seasons where I've been live for every single Grand Prix and competitive session. I would love to do the free practice sessions as well. But unfortunately, a lot of those are timing-wise, obviously being on a Friday, generally fall within working hours. So can't end up doing those a lot of the time. What tyres does Lance Stroll on? Soft compound tyres. So if you look at the graphic, 1 over from me, it does say which tyre they're on and then how many laps they've done on that tyre as well. So for instance, just to take Fernando Alonso, who's at the top of the pack right now, he was on a fresh set of soft compound tyres and then did 4 laps on those during his stint. So he did 2 formation laps or 2 build-up laps and then 1 flying lap and then the lap to come into the pits as well. So that's where those 4 laps came from. Thank you, Super Skills Gaming, for the subscription. Appreciate that, mate. But we're getting towards the sharp end then. Max Verstappen having a go now and goes quickest. So all of a sudden, Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton, George Russell coming to the fore. The Mercedes cars finding that little bit more pace. Although Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz nowhere near as fast as they were in Q1. So still pace to come when it comes to Charles Leclerc. And he's finally showing it. Quickest through the middle sector is Charles Leclerc. Kevin Magnussen, though, quickest through the first sector. That Haas seems to fly through that first sector in particular. Kevin Magnussen really clicking with the old... Oh, no, sorry. Kevin Magnussen's on the new school Haas car. Nico Hülkenberg on the old school Haas setup. But there goes Charles Leclerc and a 132.8. Charles Leclerc is redefining speed this weekend at Las Vegas. Just... Nobody seems to be within touching distance of Charles Leclerc when he really does put that pedal down towards the floor of the Ferrari. Carlos Sainz, 0.5 of a second off of his teammate. Max Verstappen, then another couple attempts off of that. Still, Lewis Hamilton, who's 5th fastest, is a second off Charles Leclerc. That's just how quick the Ferrari is. Kevin Magnussen jumping up into 4th place and Nico Hülkenberg into the top 10 as well. It does seem those Ferrari-powered cars, apart from the Alfa Romeos, the Ferrari-powered and Ferrari sister team looking really good. Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz, Kevin Magnussen, Nico Hülkenberg, 1st, 2nd, 4th, and 9th. Max Verstappen ruining the Ferrari top 3, unfortunately, for them in 3rd place. Lewis Hamilton in 5th. Sergio Perez, George Russell, Alonso, and Albon. Currently the cars that would go through into the next session. And then just underneath, we've got Gasly, Sargent, Stroll, Ricciardo, and Bottas as our 5 drivers. Hoping to get up into that top 10. Valtteri Bottas does so, but just about up into 10th place. All 15 drivers out on track. All 15 drivers on fresh sets of soft compound tyres for this final little run. Thank you, Jason, for the subscription. If only Leclerc could convert poles to wins. Yeah, what is it? 22 pole positions, 5 victories for Charles Leclerc. But unfortunately, that just shows... One, the fault of the Ferrari, I would say, in that they just don't hold on to their tyres in the best way, and they don't hold on to their tyres in any way in comparison to kind of Red Bull. McLaren under Lando Norris have been very good at holding on to their tyres this season. Mercedes, Lewis Hamilton has been very, very good at holding on to his tyres this season. Like, just shows the shortcomings of the Ferrari package when it comes to race pace, as opposed to being a slight on Charles Leclerc. I don't think Charles Leclerc has done anything too wrong in the majority of those pole position performances, but often finds himself a little bit unlucky come Sunday. I mean, also, there's quite a lot of Ferrari mess-ups in there. Like, you look at Brazil, not Charles Leclerc's fault. Two minutes to go then. Leclerc still top of the timing sheet. But realistically, it's Albon, Gasly, Sargent, Stroll and Ricciardo who we've got our eyes on at this moment in time. It's all well and good going quickest now, but that doesn't confirm yourself pole position until we get into Q3. We're looking for 5 drivers to join Lando Norris, Esteban Ocon, Zhou Guanyu, Oscar Piastri and Yuki Tsunoda, who were the 5 to miss out in Q1. Lando Norris just missing out by a 10th or 2 to Daniel Ricciardo, who is also now in 15th place once again. It'll be interesting if Ricciardo and Norris line up next to one another. I'm sure there's some interesting battles to be had between ex-teammates if they are to confirm themselves 15th and 16th. Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin trying to improve. Fernando Alonso's gone from quickest to 8th all of a sudden as well. Comes at you quickly when it comes to qualifying. The track rubbering in a touch. The track temperature 17 degrees. High humidity as well. But Lance Stroll a 10th and a half up on Valtteri Bottas's 10th place time. Trying to get out of that bottom 5 and This is going to be it realistically for Lance Stroll. He's going to come across the line before the checkered flag drops, but I don't imagine he's going to have another fast lap in that set of tyres. Once they have really pushed them to their limits, they seem to fall off quite a bit around this Las Vegas Grand Prix, but Lance Stroll followed by George Russell just behind as well. Lewis Hamilton's in there. 10th fastest Lance Stroll. So still at risk, unfortunately, Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin. George Russell improves and goes quicker than Max Verstappen. Still the Ferrari's the dominant two. Logan Sargeant then goes across the line in 6th, and Lance Stroll, that will be it for him in 11th place then. Fernando Alonso improves and goes 5th fastest. Valtteri Bottas states his intent, goes 8th fastest, but Hamilton and Perez both on laps. Hamilton in 9th place. Sergio Perez, by the way, is in the garage, and that's going to be Sergio Perez out as Albon comes across the line and goes 6th fastest. Gasly goes across the line 4th fastest, and Lewis Hamilton into the bottom 5, and Hamilton out because he's not on a flying lap by the looks of his first sector times. Wow. Hamilton and Perez out of qualifying. Right, when I said, you're guaranteed 2 Red Bulls, 2 Mercedes, 2 Ferraris, 2 McLarens in Q3, and therefore there's only a couple of gaps for the rest of the field, my goodness me, was I wrong. 2 Ferraris, yes. 1 Mercedes, 1 Red Bull, an Alpine in Pierre Gasly, 2 Williamses in Albon and Logan Sargeant. Fernando Alonso gets through for Aston Martin. There's a Haas in there. There's an Alfa Romeo in there. There's a mix. A good eclectic mix, I would say. Hamilton, Perez, Hulkenberg, Logan Sargeant. Lance Stroll. Just see the S and assume it's Logan Sargeant. Hamilton, Perez, Hulkenberg, Stroll, and Ricciardo. The 5 to miss out in Q2. So it is Hamilton, Perez, Hulkenberg, Stroll, Ricciardo, Norris, Ocon, Joe, Piastri, and Tsunoda. The 10 drivers that will be out of qualifying 3 and start 11th through 20th. And then for our top 10, ladies and gentlemen, starting off, Valtteri Bottas, Logan Sargeant, Kevin Magnussen. 3 drivers who have snuck their way into a top 10 shootout. Fernando Alonso's a fairly constant driver in the top 10, but then Alex Albon has also jumped in there. Max Verstappen, of course, in the Red Bull. Pierre Gasly, George Russell, Carlos Sainz, and Charles Leclerc will be the drivers to battle it out for pole position in this one. The Ferrari looking most likely. Charles Leclerc looking absolutely electric on this brand new street circuit. But then from there down, anything could happen. Literally anything could happen. Yeah, talking about Chris Amon. Yeah, I did a little short on him just because I couldn't flesh it out to be a full video, but it was very interesting, like the fact that Chris Amon just drove for so many different teams was a bit insane to me. Goes Sargeant indeed. Logan Sargeant, his 3rd home Grand Prix and 3rd time's the charm for him. Absolutely flying in qualifying there, Logan Sargeant. Very, very swift indeed. And we can just kind of look into where it all went wrong for Lewis Hamilton and Sergio Perez, if you'd like. Lewis Hamilton just so slow through that first sector. Like that 14th fastest of anybody through that first sector. And that's his best first sector time, by the way. Kind of came to life a little bit towards the end, got a little bit quicker in the middle sector, and 3rd fastest overall in that final sector. But Lewis Hamilton not good enough, and over a second behind Charles Leclerc's time, but only 0.03 of a second off his old teammate Valtteri Bottas, who confines him to 11th place. Sergio Perez similarly kind of in the mix. Like, first sector was good enough to get him through into the top 10, 9th fastest, but then 5th fastest in that second sector, but if you just look, that third sector is where the Red Bull really does drop off. Even Max Verstappen, 11th quickest through that final sector. And the reason is they are running a slightly higher downforce wing in comparison to some of the other cars out there. Mercedes, though, interesting because they're kind of a middle ground. If you think sort of Ferrari running the skinniest wing possible, almost very akin to what we see in Monza in terms of Ferrari setup, and then Red Bull running more downforce, more akin to a Baku setup, I would say, from Red Bull, and then Mercedes have kind of gone for a middle ground. George Russell clearly clicking with it, Lewis Hamilton not. Sergio Perez on the radio. Frustrated. Simon Bird just confirming to Sergio that unfortunately no top 10 shootout for the Mexican. On a weekend where he can confirm second place in the driver's standings over Lewis Hamilton, and he'll start right beside him. So that'll be an interesting battle to see who comes out on top between Hamilton and Perez, and see if Hamilton can stay in that fight for second place. Lewis Hamilton still in the car, maybe just hoping for a track limits infringement or a little penalty for going slowly. But looks like Lewis Hamilton is going to be confined to 11th place overall. Mercedes always managing to bottle it. Yeah, not an amazing day for Lewis Hamilton, although George Russell absolutely flying, quicker than Max Verstappen, quicker than Pierre Gasly, right in and amongst it. Little confidence boost for George, that is very true. Little confidence boost for George, definitely needed over the last few Grand Prix weekends. Hasn't been quite there. Am I using an app or is it a website? It is an app. So if you head over to multiviewer.com, you can download the Multiviewer app, and then the world is then opened up to you, I would say. There is everything from Formula 1, there's IndyCar in there, I think there's WEC on there as well, if you ever watch any of those series and want live timings for that. There's track boards, sector timings, speed trap timings, track limits violations, everything and anything that you could ever want from the guys over at Multiviewer in terms of data looking at Formula 1 and any motorsport that comes to mind. Has Sainz still got a 10-place penalty? He does indeed. So Carlos Sainz will probably end up in that mix of Lewis Hamilton and Sergio Perez. We'll have to kind of wait and see who's going to be where with the Ferrari. But if Carlos Sainz comes home pole position, he'll start in 11th. So we'll kind of see. Lando Norris saying that the Red Bull should get a penalty for jumping in the way of him on that flying lap. Oscar Piastri also frustratingly out of qualifying. Let's hear a little bit of what he has to say. Yeah, Oscar Piastri just saying, a couple of bits and pieces. If they'd have gone differently, they'd have definitely been through. Opting to not use a fresh set of tyres. Not quite running the way of the other drivers out there. Running into a little bit of traffic. Getting caught up in a couple of little battles. So, Oscar Piastri, hopeful that there can be an improvement tomorrow, at least. Bottas taking out Hamilton, I know. The old teammate, the ghost of Valtteri Bottas, coming to ruin Lewis Hamilton's weekend. On a weekend where Lewis Hamilton's been very, very positive, actually. He's enjoyed being on track and has said that he's been enjoying the Las Vegas Grand Prix circuit, but not enjoying it enough to get into the top 10. Perez is finished. Needs to just retire, I think. Imagine Hamilton in the second Red Bull car. I mean, that will be an imagine, because that is never going to happen. But yeah, Max faced some serious challenge of a driver who's equal or better. That's just not really how Formula 1 works, unfortunately. A lot of times you'll see kind of the best teams or at least the most dominant teams, do have an established 1-2. It's very, very rare nowadays that you have two teammates properly battle it out for a championship. Suppose you could say Hamilton Alonso when they were at McLaren together. Hamilton Rosberg, of course, in the Mercedes car. But since then, or even before that, I suppose Webber wasn't too far off in the Sebastian Vettel era, but never quite sort of put Vettel under the real pressure of a top kind of driver battle. Fernando Alonso looking quick once again. Obviously, fourth fastest in Brazil was a real turn of form for him. And that podium position by millimeters from Sergio Perez. But here we are then, Q3, the top 10, getting ourselves underway. Fernando Alonso is going to go for it. DRS, of course, wide open down towards turn 5. The sphere in the background as the cars run through turn 6 and enter the sphere's gaze. A little chicane by the sphere just so you can see it a little bit more. Charles Leclerc, stop it. Fastest first sector of anybody already. And just absolutely flying. That is the fastest first sector we've seen of anybody all day. Charles Leclerc is on it. That is very, very clear from the lap times that we are seeing. Carlos Sainz, quickest through the middle sector so far, though. But a Charles Leclerc purple first sector just feels inevitable. Sphere runs Google Chrome sponsor. Yeah, I did hear that. I don't know whether I just read that. I read that on like the official Formula One website, though. The Sphere wasn't supposed to run any colors akin to the flags, but maybe that's during the race as opposed to qualifying. I don't know. Bit of a weird one. Leclerc, Norris, Piastri for that second Red Bull Racing seat. Serious contenders. Leclerc less so. Norris, Piastri may be, but the McLaren looking fairly swift. Max Verstappen, though, a tenth of a second off the Ferraris. Like, Charles Leclerc, not the quickest lap we've seen from him today. A 133 dead. A 133 dead from Carlos Sainz as well, but 0.02 of a second separating the Ferrari cars. Oh, as Fernando Alonso locks up into turn 14. Max Verstappen third fastest, but less than a tenth off of Charles Leclerc. And then Fernando Alonso kind of jumped backwards to fourth place, 5 tenths off. Gasly then 7 tenths off the pace. Kevin Magnussen in sixth of the drivers who have set real lap times. George Russell out of the pits. Albon and Sargent both in the pits. Bottas also remains in the pits. Maybe not the sets of new tyres needed. I think Albon has only got one fresh set of softs, and I imagine then Sargent and Bottas may be the same. So opting to just go for one Hail Mary run at the end. At least they show up right where their car's set up. Perhaps brought the Monza car itself. They are running the Monza rear wing, our Ferrari. So makes sense that just whenever there's lots of straights, they are absolutely flying around. But here is George Russell then. The sole Mercedes out there after Lewis Hamilton drops into 11th place. But George Russell, what can he do? Can he find a little bit of form? Has been struggling through this 2023 season. It's had a lot of ups and downs for George Russell. But a real opportunity now to stamp some authority back on the Mercedes team and show Lewis Hamilton what this Mercedes car could do had he got through into Q3. So much pace through that car, down to turn 11, turn 12. Take that turn 12 with as much speed as possible, carrying as much speed because you need to. Turn 12, 13 and 14, that's straight with a kink. The Las Vegas Strip welcoming the car in. You get comfortable on there, but then turn 14 at you all of a sudden, down towards turn 14. And really lovely, hits the apex perfectly. George Russell wiggles the car through 15 and 16 as well. Another devilish straight. Turn 17, flicking the car in almost at top speed. And George Russell, 133.5 and P5 for George Russell. More to come, though, from George Russell. A couple attempts of his Q2 time there. What Premier League football team do I support? I am a... Ooh. Max Verstappen, a kiss on the wall. Wow, very, very close indeed. I'm a Liverpool fan from when I was a child. And you can blame Fernando Torres for that. Could we have the map back up, please? Oh, yeah, sorry. Just getting a little bit taken away by the sector timings. More taken away by Charles Leclerc, just putting in a hell of a performance at this point. But you are right. We do need to have a little look at the map to see who's going to be where in this battle. 4 minutes left to go in this session. Carlos Sainz looks to be the car at the front of this pack. Sargent, Alonso, Bottas finally out. Albon also, his first flying lap of this Q3 session. Only the one set of fresh soft compound tyres for him. Gasly and Magnussen. Charles Leclerc is the one I'm looking for. And Charles Leclerc just coming out of the pits now. So Charles Leclerc ready to go for this one. Max Verstappen still in the pits with 3 minutes left to go. Everyone else out on track, but Verstappen clearly gambling on leaving it as late as humanly possible. Here we go then. Verstappen is out of the pits as Carlos Sainz comes across the start-finish line. Max Verstappen has left this a touch late, in my opinion. It's going to have to get out of the way of Sainz and Alonso, but hopefully he isn't spending too much time and losing too much temperature getting out of the way. Ooh. Oh, it's the second warm-up lap for Carlos Sainz. That makes sense. Or is it? Carlos Sainz, a bit of a weird one. Alex Albon definitely on a second warm-up lap. Charles Leclerc then might actually be the first driver to get us underway. With only the one warm-up lap. Everyone else going for a couple of warm-up laps behind. And the same with Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc are actually going to be the first drivers across the line, even though they were the last drivers to come out of the pits, because everybody else using that option to go for a couple of warm-up laps, get those tyres in maybe a slightly nicer window. Charles Leclerc coming through that sector through the sphere, just carrying the speed through 6 and 7, tackling that 8th. Oh, it's just perfect from Charles Leclerc by the looks of things. But a poor first sector, actually. Even though this middle sector looking pretty swift from Charles Leclerc. Yeah, this middle sector indeed looking swift from Charles Leclerc. Goes purple. But I didn't realize his first sector was so poor. So quick through that middle sector. Oh, and Max Verstappen even slow through the first sector. So it does feel like the car's struggling in that first sector. Max Verstappen, 0.6 off Charles Leclerc as he comes through the second sector. Wow. So let's see then. Charles Leclerc sets the standard at a 132.7 with 3 seconds left on the clock. And there is the checkered flag. I don't think Max Verstappen's going to be anywhere close to that. Like, even within a bus stop of that from Charles Leclerc, he's going to be so far adrift. Carlos Sainz, though, is very, very close. Obviously, the 10 place penalty, Carlos Sainz needs to get onto pole. He'll still start in 11th place, but it will give him a better opportunity tomorrow than starting anywhere else. And Verstappen into the pits. Abandon that lap then. Let's go, Carlos Sainz. Oh, 0.05 of a second. Basically, oh, Logan Sargent has just gone 4th fastest. George Russell is on a lap as well. Valtteri Bottas goes 5th. George Russell, there we go, up into 4th place. Alex Albon up into 5th. Wow. Pierre Gasly up into 5th instead. What? Kevin Magnussen. Is Magnussen still on a lap? By the looks of things, it's coming through 14, 15, 16. But is Magnussen on a lap or is he coming into the pits? He's into the pits as Kevin Magnussen, not on a lap. So that is Leclerc and Sainz, our top 2. Remember, though, Carlos Sainz with a 10-place penalty drops him down to 12th place. So everybody from 12th up will be up 1 place. So we're looking at a Charles Leclerc, Max Verstappen front row. We're then looking at George Russell and Pierre Gasly just behind. An exceptional performance from the Alpine man. Like, Pierre Gasly has been absolutely on it recently. Flying at this moment in time, Pierre Gasly. Then we've got Alex Albon and Logan Sargent starting together. Wow, the 3rd row of the grid is a double Williams performance. Valtteri Bottas and Kevin Magnussen will then start just behind. The 5th row of the grid is going to be Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton. Talk about experience. That 5th row of the grid, been there, seen it, done it all before. Sergio Perez then starts in front of Carlos Sainz on the 6th row of the grid. So it's going to be Sergio Perez 11th, Carlos Sainz 12th. And then behind that, Nico Hülkenberg and Lance Stroll will start together. Daniel Ricciardo and Lando Norris, the teammates at McLaren for a couple of years, of course. Ocon and Joe then behind that as well. And then Oscar Piastri and Yuki Tsunoda will start at the back of the pack. So a load of talking points and a load of storylines in there. Leclerc, Verstappen, anything could happen. Russell, Gasly, both trying to redeem a little bit of momentum. Gasly finding it in the second half of the season. George Russell still looking. Albon and Sargent, the Williamses together in the top 10. What can they do? Bottas, Magnussen, both of those cars looking dead and buried at this point in the season. And suddenly the Alfa Romeo and the Haas look back to their best. Alonso and Hamilton, of course, have been there, done it. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. What a grid we have on our hands tomorrow. Definitely waking up at 6 a.m. As you say, Alex, we need to be there. Logan slowly proving himself. I mean, it's a hell of a qualifying performance. If you look at the rest of the season, still some question marks for me. But not too shabby at all from Logan Sargent today. Can't detract anything from that performance. Thank you guys so much for watching. as Alex said, we are definitely waking up tomorrow, 6 a.m. I will be live about 5:30, 5:45, in and around that kind of half an hour to 15 minutes before the race itself. We'll watch all the build up. Of course, we need to be here for the grid walk. I'm really hoping that the grid walk is just absolute mayhem because because Formula One. But we will get there tomorrow. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you everybody who subscribed during this. Appreciate it. We're heading towards 25k all of a sudden, a quarter of a way to that YouTube button. Just imagine, like, you know, a YouTube plaque in and amongst the background. Wouldn't that be exceptional? Oh yeah, there's a good hint at which football team I support. I forgot I had this here. Little memento ball from when I went to Anfield. But anyway, thank you guys so much. I will see you tomorrow. Do something exciting. It's really